दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्त्यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्त्यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। ॐ श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। We are continuing discussion on the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Shankaracharya's Bhashyam, the commentary. And now we are about to introduce the 17th verse of the second chapter. So, at the end of the Bhashya, in our previous session, the Bhashyakara says, Tumapi tattvadarsinam drishtim asritya shokam moham cha hitva Sidoshnadini niyata aniyata rupani dundvani vikaraha ayam asan eva marichi jalavat mithya avabhasade idi manasi nischitya tidikshasva iti abhiprayaka. So, the Bhashyakara says Lord Krishna's advice. Lord Krishna is giving advice to Arjuna. Just like the great Tattvadarshins who have realized the absolute reality, he also practiced Tidiksha. Like Sita, Ushna, all these Dvandvas. So, cold, heat, all these opposites, pain, pleasure, happiness, unhappiness, all these are ultimately unreal. They may appear to be real at empirical level, they appear to come into existence at the empirical level, they exist for some time, then they disappear. Therefore, in the absolute analysis, from the perspective of Paramarthika Satta, these dvandvas, these opposites are unreal. Just like false appearances, like the water of a mirage. Therefore, keeping in mind the unreal nature, or rather the relativity of these empirical experiences which come and go, you should be able to bear them with titiksha. So, after this, the Bhashyakara introduces us to the 17th verse. Kim punaga tat yat sat eva sarvada eva asti iti uchyate. So, now the question arises, what is that sat without which even these mithya appearances cannot come and go? Without the background of an absolute reality, without the background of an unchanging reality, appearances cannot come and go. In the context of the mirage, for example, the sand should be there. So when we look at the sand from a distance, under the blazing sun, we may mistake that sandy expansion, the sand, for a pool of water. But sand should be there. Water is of course unreal, but there should be the sand. Like for example, when you mistake a rope for a snake, even for that misunderstanding, there should be a rope. Without a rope, you cannot mistake that rope for a snake, that is sarpa, jaladhara, danda or bhuchidra. A rope in a dark room where there is not enough light or just a very dim light, you may mistake the rope for a snake because the shape of the rope, the color of the rope may resemble that of a snake that you have seen in the zoo, maybe somewhere else. So from the past memory, we may superimpose the shape and the size and the color of the snake on the rope. Maybe we may even mistake that rope for a crack on the floor, bhutchidra, or maybe a thin stream of water on the floor, jaladhara, or maybe a curved stick, a danda. These are possible misunderstandings, but for all these, there should be a substratum, and that substratum is the rope. Now the question arises, even for these appearances, empirical experiences, there should be the background of an absolute reality. What is the nature of that absolute reality? That is the method of introducing all of us into the 17th chapter. So Bhashyam says, Kim punara tat yet sadeva sarvada eva asti iti uchyate. What is then that reality, that absolute reality that is eternally real? Introducing this, Lord Krishna statement is made here. Avinasi tu tad vidhi yena sarvamidam tadam vinasam avayasyasya nakaschit kartumarkasi. So the verse is this: Avinasi tu tad vidhi yena sarvamidam tadam vinasam avayasyasya nakaschit kartumarkati. So know this reality by which everything else is pervaded, and that reality is imperishable. It is avinasi, imperishable, and no one can bring about a destruction of this imperishable reality. The great commentator on the Bhagavad Gita, Madhusudana Saraswati, here introduces all of us into this subject. What is this Avinashi? So in the Gurartha Deepika, Madhusudana Saraswati says, Vinasho deshata karadu vastuto va parichedaka sa asya astidi vinasi. What is vinasi? Parichinnam. That which may get destroyed or may undergo changes in terms of place, space, time, or for any other reason. Any kind of limitation in terms of time, space and causation. That makes everything vinasi or parichinnam, limited, the changeable, that which belongs to the empirical vyavakariga jagat. Tad vidakshana avinasi. So something which is not vinasi, something which is not parichinnam, that is avinasi. So avinasi is aparichinnam, which doesn't undergo any change or any destruction in terms of time, space and causation. Something that remains same in the past, present and future. That is, Trishu apikaleshu na vibhijarati tadeva satyam. That which doesn't change in the past, present and future. That's which is trikara abhadhita, and that absolute reality which is Shadvikara Atita, which is beyond the six changes, six vikaras like Jayade, Asti, Vardhade, Viparinamade, Apakshiyade, Vinasyati, that which comes into existence, which means a change from a state of empirical non-existence into a state of empirical existence. From a state of relative non-existence, something comes into existence, relative existence. It is called birth. This Brahman, this Atman, it doesn't come into existence because it always exists. And therefore it doesn't undergo any of the changes. You cannot say it exists, because you can say about something that it exists only in a very empirical sense, in the relative sense. Because to say that it exists, there should be a distant, remote possibility of its non-existence. Brahman can never be non-existent. It is always existing. So, Even in empirical sense, you cannot say it comes into existence because it always exists. And it doesn't undergo the changes called growth, evolution, decay or disappearance or death. Because at the empirical level, even death or disappearance is nothing but a change, a vikara, from a state of empirical existence into an empirical non-existence. And this Avinashi, this Avarichinam, this Atma, this Brahman, being eternal, immortal and imperishable, is beyond all these changes. Therefore, that's why in the Mandukya Karika, Gaudapada says, Ado ande chayat nasti, vartamanevi tattatha, vidade sadrisha santu, avidatha iva ekshita. So, things which do not exist at the beginning or end, it cannot exist even at the present. So, the absolute reality is beyond the past, present and future. So, you cannot say that it exists in empirical sense because it is always existing and it will never cease to exist. So, Adi Anta, beginning and end and middle, all or past, present and future, these three points of time can be applied only to things of this world, only to empirical phenomena, only to vyavaharika entities, and this reality is paramarthika. So Madhusudana continues, Tad vilakshanam avinashi, vinasho deshada kaladu vastutova parichedana sa asya stiri vinashi parichinnam. Tad vilakshanam avinashi, what is distinct and different from vinashi is avinashi. Sarva pragara paricheda shunyam. It is devoid of any kind of limitation. Tu evata sadrugam sphiranam tu vidhi janihi. That sadrugam, that absolute reality, that sat, it is sarva pragara paricheda shunyam. It is beyond, it is devoid of any kind of limitations in terms of time, space and causation. Kim tat yena sadrubena sphiranena ekena nityena vibhuna sarvamidam drishyajadam swataha satta spurti shunyam tadam vyaptam. So by that sat, by that absolute reality, all these things which called idam, sarvamidam drishyajadam, this whole universe, whatever you find in this cosmos, in this universe, is pervaded by that absolute reality. Sadruvena tadam vyaptam susatta purti adhyasena rijjusakalena iva sarpadharadi susmin samavesidam tat abhinashi iva vidhi ityartha. So the great commentator Madhusudana says, whether you mistake a piece of rope for a snake or for a thin stream of water or a crack on the floor or a piece of curved stick, depending upon the shape of that particular rope, whatever it may be, that object which you mistake, which you by mistake imagine to exist, which really do not exist, is pervaded by the rope, because rope alone exists. That rope is now mistaken to be maybe a snake, a crack on the floor, or a stick, a curved stick, or maybe a thin stream of water. So we have to remember the old analogy, how somebody mistakes a piece of rope, a dark colored rope that is lying on the floor in dim light, how that rope may be mistaken by a person, by somebody, to be a snake, to be a crack on the floor, maybe a thin stream of water, etc. And when you bring light, or when you open the door, when you switch on the light, what happens is the snake idea, the stick idea, the thin stream of water idea, they disappear immediately. Once these misunderstandings are gone, then the revelation of rope is automatic, it is effulgent. So Bhashyakara says, Shastrantu ajnana nivartakam na jnana pravartakam. The light doesn't necessarily reveal the rope. The light only removes the darkness, but the dimness of the light is removed, and once the light becomes clear, the fact that it is a piece of rope becomes automatically obvious. So now coming to the verse, Avinasi tat vidhi. Tat avinasi, that tat, that by which idam sarvam jagat, that by which this whole cosmos is pervaded, is imperishable. Avinasi, aparichinam. In the language of Madhusudana Saraswati, sarva prakara paricheda shunyam. So, what is that tat? What is that idam? These are two very important words in Vedanta, tat and idam. So, according to Vedanta acharyas, tat has got a definite meaning. The great Vidyaranya, who wrote Panchadesi, he explained tat. Jagato yadupadanam maya madaya tamasin nimittam shuddha sattvam tamuchyade brahmatad gira. This is a definition, the vakyartham of tat pada in the Panchadesi of Vidyaranya. Yet tamasi mayam upadaya jagadaha upadanam shuddha sattvam tam upadaya jagadaha nimittam tad brahma tad gira uchyate. So this Tattwamasi is an important Mahavakya, Upadesha Mahavakya. So what is the meaning of these three? That's reality. That Brahman becomes the material and efficient cause of this universe when it is associated with those aspects of Maya in which there is predominance of tapas and sattva respectively, and this Brahman is referred to as that in the text Tattwamasi. So this is the explanation of Vidyaranya. Brahman becomes a material cause and also the efficient cause, like the earth or clay for a pot maker, which is a material cause, and the pot maker himself is the efficient cause. So Brahman is both the material and also the efficient cause of this world when that Brahman is associated with those aspects of Maya in which there is a predominance of tapas and sattva respectively. So this Brahman is called tat in the particular text Vakya Mahavakyam called Tattwamasi. So that tat is Brahman itself, is nothing beyond that. So avinasitu tad vidhi yena sarvam idam jagat. Idam also has got a very well structured definite definition and meaning in Vedanta. So the same Vidyaranya says ekadashendriya yuktya shastrena api avagamyate yavat kinchit bhave edat idam shabdodidam jagat. So what is idam? Idam is nothing but the entire cosmic phenomena cognized by us with the help of five senses of action, five senses of perception, mind, and also with the help of Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda, Arthavati and Anuvilapti, all the pramanas which are accepted in Vedanta. So whatever we perceive, whatever we define or cognize, with the help of these 11 senses, that is, a mind also is considered to be one of the senses. Without mind, the senses of perception cannot perceive anything. So anything which is cognized by the 5 senses of perception and 5 senses of action and mind and understood and interpreted by the pramanas, pratyaksha, direct perception, inference, that is anumana, comparison, upamana, verbal testimony, shabda, presumption, and of course anuvarabdhi, abhava. So all these pramanas are accepted in Vedanta, the 6 pramanas, and also in Bhattamimamsa. So whatever we interact with, whatever we cognize, perceive, or define or interpret with the help of the 5 senses of perception, jnana, pancha jnanendriyas, 5 senses of action, pancha karmendriyas, mind, and also interpreted and defined and analyzed by the tools of knowledge, like pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, shabda, arthavati, anuvilapti. They constitute idam sarvam. So all these are pervaded by this Brahman, which is Avinasi, which is Sarva Pradaya Parichidya Shunyam or Avarichanam. And Lord Krishna says, no one can bring about the destruction of this inexhaustible Avinasi, because this Avinasi, it pervades everything that we can think of, that we can interact with, that we can imagine to exist before us. Now Bhashya continues. Avinasi na vinashtum shilam asya idi tu shabdaha asataha visheshnarthaka. So we have already explained what is avinasi. That which is of the nature of existing all the time, that which is not of the nature of being changed or destroyed any time, that will be the same throughout, that is called avinasi. Na vinashtum shilam asyiti, that which is not of the nature of being altered, ruined or destroyed is avinasi. Tu shabdaha asado visheshnarthaka. So the word tu is used here to distinguish the real, the absolute reality, the avinasi, from the asat, the unreal, that is the vyavaharika satta in this particular context. So the word tu is used in the commentary, so in the text, to distinguish the real, the eternal, the absolute reality from its opposite, the unreal, the empirical vyavaharika reality. Tad vidhi vijanihi. Understand this very well. Please know this. Kim yena sarvam idam jagat tadam vyaptam sadakhena brahmana sakasham akashena iva ghadadeha. So, tum vidhi vijanihi. You understand this perfectly well. Kim yena sarvam idam jagat tadam vyaptam. By what is this universe pervaded? An example is given. As a pot is pervaded by ether, there is a ghada. Akashena iva ghadadeha. So, as a ghata which contains space, it is pervaded by akasha. Similarly, everything that you find in this cosmos is pervaded by the Sat. Vinasham adarsanam abhavam avyasya na veti. Upajaya apachayo na yadi iti avyayam tasya avyasya. So vinasham here means a state of non-existence. Which could also mean change. So any kind of vikara is actually a kind of change. In Vedanta, even birth implies a kind of vikara because, as I mentioned earlier, from a state of empirical or relative non-existence, it comes into a state of empirical existence. But all the six changes take place in Vyavaharika itself, at the empirical level itself. Therefore, this vinasham, as we understand, change or vikara, is a kind of non-existent. That vinasha cannot be applied to this avinasi, this tat. That which does not increase or decrease is avya. That which is naveti, upajaya apachayo nayati. That never changes, never increases, never decreases. It is avinashi. Asya, this avya. Na yeda sadakyam brahma svena rupena veti vibhijarati niravayavatva dehadivat. Now this Brahman is called Sat. It cannot undergo any kind of exhaustion like body. So anything which is made of components or parts will certainly undergo exhaustion or in kind of a state of fragmentation. Anything which is made of parts will undergo change through fragmentation. This Brahman is Niravayava. It is composite, it is compact, it is one entity, is being partless. And also it doesn't diminish in the event of losing anything belonging to it. Because it has nothing to lose, it is itself perfect. Napi atmiyena atmiya bhavat. It doesn't belong to any particular place. It doesn't belong to any particular place. Therefore, it cannot go from one place to another place. It has no belonging. So the example is given, Yatha devadattu dhanahanya veti natu evam brahma veti. So, person like Devadatta, he is rich now and tomorrow he may become poor. He may lose his money. So he becomes impoverished. So what he has got, something that belongs to him, he may lose tomorrow. So he loses what he had previously. So in the case of this Brahman, no such changes can happen because it is avya naveti. Ataha avyasya asya brahmano vinasham na kaschit kartum arhati na kaschit atmanam vinashayidum shaknoti ishvara api. Now, no one can bring destruction of this Brahman. This avyasya asya brahmano vinasham na kaschit kartum arhati. This brahmana vinasham, the destruction of this Brahman, cannot be brought down by anybody. No one can bring about its destruction or change. Because this Brahman is our true nature. We cannot bring about our own destruction. Our true nature is this Paramarthika Satta, which is avinashi, which is avarichinnam, which is imperishable, which is unchangeable, which remain the same in the past, present and future, which has no end, which is beyond all vikaras, which is beyond all changes. Therefore, this Brahman remains same. It is our true nature. Therefore, we are eternal, we are immortal. How do we realize this fact? The great Gaudapada in his Mantukitarika says, Anadi Maya Supto Yadha Jiva Prabudhide Ajam Anidram Aswapnam Advaitam Buddhide Tada. So long as we understand ourselves, we look upon ourselves as part of this empirical phenomena. It's subject to change, it is subject to growth, vikaras, jayade, asti, vardhade, viparinamade, apakshiyade, vinasade, all these changes. So long as we interpret, we look upon ourselves as this body, mind or intellect, or this body, mind complex, we are in a state of spiritual stupor, spiritual sleep. When we realize that we are, by our true nature, this Avinashi, this Aparicchinnam, this Brahman, is our true nature, then we wake up our spiritual eyes. We wake up from a long spiritual slumber and realize our true nature. Then we understand that we are imperishable, we are eternal. Atmo hi brahma swatmani cha kriya virodhat. Atmo hi brahma, Bhashyam says, this Brahman, this Atman is not something or somebody outside. It is our own true nature. It is our own self. And if it is our own nature, our own true self, then it cannot undergo any change. There cannot be any activity on it. Kim punagatat asat yat swatmasattam vibhijarati idi uchyate. Now the question arises, what is then this asat? So far we have explained that this sat, this Atman or Brahman is Avinashi, Aparicchinnam, and it is Sarvapradara Paricheda Shunyam in the language of Madhusudana. And this Sat Rubena Spiranena Ekena Nityena Vibhuna Sarvamidam Drishijadam Sudara Sattasphuti Shunyam Taram Vyaptam Susatta Puti Adhyasena Richusagalena Iva Sarpadhara Viswasmin Samaveshidam Tat Avinashi. So this Avinashi, this Brahman, it is the substratum of everything. Just like the Rajju is the substratum of mistaken ideas of snake or crack on the floor, because without a Rajju as a substratum, we cannot have even a snake idea. Like that, without this Sat at the background of the empirical, the unreal, we cannot logically explain even the illusion of the unreal. The water and the mirage cannot be explained, even cannot be understood without thinking of the substratum without which this water delusion cannot emerge. Similarly, this unreal world should have a substratum, and that is this Brahman Avinashi. Now the Bhashyam discusses Kim punagatat asat yes swapmasattam vibhijaratim idi uchyate. Now what is this unreal thing which changes from time to time, which undergoes sadvikaras, which changes in the past, present and future? What is that asat? That is explained in the 18th verse. Antavanta ime deha nityasyukto sharirinah anasino aprameyasya tasmat vidyasya bharata. So Bhashyam says, Antavanta Anto vinasho vidyate yesham te antavanta. Yatha mrigashnigadu sadbuddhi anutta pramana nirupanande vichidyade satasyaha anta तथा इमे देहा स्वप्नमाया देहादिवच्च अंतवन्तः नित्यस्य शरीरिणः शरीरवतः अनाशिनः अप्रमेयस्य आत्मनः अंतवन्त इति उक्ता विवेकिभिः इत्यर्थः. So Lord Krishna says, हे भारत, अंतवन्तः इमे देहा नित्यस्य अनाशिनः अप्रमेयस्य शरीरिणः उक्ताः तस्मात् युध्यस्व. Hello, hey Arjuna, these human bodies actually they have an end. They are andavanta. In reality, they belong to the self, which is actually indestructible. So these bodies and all the empirical phenomena which come together as idam sarvam, as mentioned in the previous verse and Bhashyam, they actually belong to, they are pervaded by the Atman, which is indestructible. So here Lord Krishna is addressing the basic problem of Arjuna's mind. Arjuna was trying to run away from his duties and responsibilities, thinking that we are all these human bodies, nothing other than this human body. So if he engaged in his duties and responsibilities as a soldier to protect dharma, to look after dharma, to protect the poor people, the women folk from enemies, and thereby if he injures these soldiers, he will be incurring a terrible sin. So according to him, according to Arjuna, as you find in the first chapter, a human being is nothing other than this body. So if you injure a human being, it will be a terrible sin. Lord Krishna wanted to convince Arjuna that in reality, this body, this mind, all these things are in fact destructible, they are perishable. The only imperishable thing is Atman behind all this. So once Lord Krishna could bring Arjuna into a sense of understanding of the imperishable nature of all of us, then Arjuna can be freed, completely liberated from his delusion of human body being the beginning and the end of everything. Arjuna will be convinced of the transcendental nature of our personality. Human mind, body, intellect, all these belong to the empirical level. Once we understand the trans-empirical level of our personality, then Arjuna will not be worried, will not be concerned about his duties, which may involve the destruction of his enemies. So Krishna is trying to bring a sense of duty to Arjuna's mind by convincing him of the basic, inherent, indestructible nature of our Atman on the one hand, and also Krishna wants to convince Arjuna that these human bodies are, after all, by the very nature subject to changes. Whether you like it or not, one day it will come and go. That's all. So we will continue our discussion in the next session. Thank you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Rama Krishna Pranamastu.